All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Grant Schaller, and I'm a second-year student here at Tuck. And on behalf of the Tuck Food and Ag Club and the Center for Private Equity and Venture Capital, welcome to Day 2 of Tuck's third annual virtual summit on ag tech. Today's topic is the grower's vision, and we're going to hear from a number of producers from across the industry. We'll also cover some other great topics today around food waste, aquaculture, and more. As a reminder, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen to ask and vote on questions, and we're going to do our best to get to as many of those as possible. So let's move into the first session. I'm joined now by Viraj Puri, who's the co-founder and CEO of Gotham Greens. Viraj is here today to provide a keynote talk on the indoor farming revolution. I'm also joined by my classmate Taylor Beaton, who will facilitate the Q&A at the end of Viraj's presentation. So first, a little bit about Viraj. Viraj is an entrepreneur and innovator who has helped to advance the indoor urban farming industry. He's paved the way for building commercial-scale indoor farming operations in the hearts of cities across America. Viraj has dedicated his career to nurturing the growth of the controlled environment ag sector and demonstrating the important role that urban ag plays in the future of our food system. He's deeply committed to weaving ESG principles into the DNA of companies and using the private sector as a force for positive change in the world. In 2009, Viraj co-founded Gotham Greens in Brooklyn, New York, and over the past decade, under Viraj's leadership as CEO, Gotham Greens has grown to become one of the largest and most commercially successful indoor farming companies in the world. Gotham Greens has nearly 400 employees, 8 high-tech greenhouse facilities spanning over 500,000 square feet across 5 U.S. states, and Gotham has additional projects under development. Today, Gotham Greens products are available in more than 2,000 grocery store locations and in more than 40 U.S. states. The company has raised more than $130 million in equity and debt financing to date, recently closing its Series D round. Under Viraj's leadership, the company has initiated and instilled a meaningful focus on corporate social responsibility and giving back to the communities in which Gotham Greens operates through various education programs and product donations. Prior to Gotham Greens, Viraj led startup enterprises in the US, India, and Malawi focused on sustainable ag, green building, renewable energy, and environmental design. And so without further ado, I'll pass it over to Viraj Puri to speak about the indoor farming revolution.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's great to be with you all today. I'm going to share my screen and walk through a presentation. Is the audio okay? I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, but maybe that's just on my end. Okay. Go. Great. Well, based on that introduction, you all know that I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gotham Greens. Thrilled to be talking about indoor farming and our company's evolution with you this afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. Gotham Greens is a fresh food company, farming with the future in mind. Our vision is to really transform how and where fresh produce is grown in America. And we do that by building and operating high-tech, climate-controlled greenhouse facilities for fresh vegetable production. These facilities enable us to grow a very consistent, reliable, year-round supply of premium quality, locally grown fruits and vegetables. And these, because of the production system and the supply chain model, it enables the products to be very nutritionally dense, flavorful, longer lasting, which are all key attributes not only to consumers, but also to retailers and food service operators. What inspired us to start this business about a decade ago was really an exploration of the fresh produce supply chain, specifically looking at leafy greens, which is about a $15 billion segment in the United States and Canada. It was amazing to us to learn about 98% of that production really is concentrated in 2 main production areas, one in California and the other in Arizona. And so this 98% of this 15 billion TAM is really produced in 2 growing regions, very, very centralized, and then requires that all of that production has to be transported across the US and Canada to reach retailers, food service operators, and consumers. Given the complexity of the supply chain, given the perishability of the products, consumers are left with very short shelf life, and retailers were left with high spoilage rates of these items. So our model was really to disrupt that supply chain and build a whole network of greenhouse facilities in major markets across the United States, passing on a lot of that shelf life to the end consumer while reducing food waste, which, as many of you may know, is one of the leading contributors to emissions, both methane and carbon emissions in the United States today, based on just the sheer volume of food that is discarded. We were also really just fascinated by this technology, which is broadly known as controlled environment agriculture. So as the name implies, we control the environment to create optimal growing conditions to grow the plants. And these techniques have been practiced commercially in many parts of the world for the past 50 years. But over the past 10 or 12 years, they've gone through just exponential research and development and progress in terms of productivity, energy savings, and things like that. So from a sustainability perspective, we were just really drawn to how productive controlled environment agriculture or indoor farming can be. Specifically, these systems, if one can recirculate the irrigation water, it allows us to use about 95% less water than conventional farming. So in other words, a typical head of lettuce grown out in the field in California or Arizona may take about 30 to 40 gallons of water to grow. Conversely, we can grow that using less than a couple of gallons of water. So just the water savings are extremely staggering. And in a world now today where water is becoming a more scarce resource, we firmly believe that this form of farming is going to play a much greater role. Land use efficiency is also very remarkable in the controlled environment agriculture. Depending on the different types of systems, it differs a bit, but at Gotham Greens, we use about 97% less land than conventional farming. So in other words, what we can produce out of an acre of greenhouse would require upwards of 35 acres out in the field. And we've really optimized our energy usage, reduced food miles, as well as waste, given the supply chain efficiencies that the model provides. Overall, sustainability is really just a cornerstone of what we do. I spent the early part of my career in environmental engineering and working at clean tech companies. And so just everything about being able to utilize the sun, use renewable electricity, use less water, eliminate the use of harmful chemicals and harmful chemical pesticides, and reducing food miles was all very, very compelling for us to launch this business, and is why the indoor farming sector has been receiving so much interest over the past decade in terms of media, investment, retailers, and the end consumer. So we're proud that we have a large network of greenhouses across the United States today. We started off with the proof of concept facility in Brooklyn, New York, which is where we are headquartered. It was a small 15,000 square foot rooftop greenhouse in the heart of Brooklyn, very close to where our headquarters are located. But in a few short months, we realized that we were really onto something, given just the strong unit economics of the facility, becoming profitable in a few short months of operations, and more importantly, just the demand from retailers and consumers. They were just really responding to the value proposition of getting such a consistent and reliable supply of locally grown vegetables at such high quality. And consumers really gravitated to the brand story as well of these commodities being grown right in their backyard in New York City. That led to a couple of other rooftop greenhouses, including a high-profile partnership with Whole Foods Market, where we built a greenhouse on the roof of one of their stores. Slowly, as demand for the product increased, we started to build larger and larger facilities, as well as expanding to Chicago, which gave us a foothold in the Midwest and allowed us to really test our model in a different market. As demand for the products continued to increase and we realized that we needed more scalability, we decided to build larger and larger facilities and go to different parts of the country to really build out this network, this national network of greenhouses to truly be a national brand, but have this very unique local supply chain. So today we have greenhouses in Rhode Island that serve the New England market, two greenhouses in Chicago that serve the Midwest, a facility in Maryland that serves the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, one in Denver, Colorado for the Mountain States, and we'll be opening a new greenhouse in California this summer to serve the West Coast, in addition to our original 3 greenhouses in New York City. Each greenhouse, we've iterated upon the technology. They've become more advanced, more automated, more use of data, and just really interesting hardware and software to optimize the growing conditions to grow as many plants as possible, really increase the biomass of what we can produce per square foot or per acre of facility, and then also really starting to employ advanced planning, production planning technologies, as well as really software for our employees to be able to manage this increasingly decentralized network of high-tech production facilities. We employ about 400 people, ranging from about 50 people in our corporate headquarters in Brooklyn, New York, to anywhere between 20 and 50 full-time employees at all of our regional greenhouse facilities. So these range from, our corporate team ranges from, finance to strategy, operations, sales and marketing, to, experts in things like food safety, post-harvest handling, and other things that are very specific to our industry. And then each greenhouse has employed plant scientists and people just with expertise in hydroponics and controlled environment agriculture, etc. So in terms of our products, we focus primarily on leafy greens, lettuces, other salad greens, as well as some value-added products, including fresh salad dressings and cooking sauces like pesto that are made using herbs that we grow in our greenhouses. There's many crops that are well-suited and commercially proven to indoor farming, which include tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, increasingly strawberries, as well as other types of commodities like flowers, and other types of things. Those are the types of crops that are, again, like I said previously, commercially viable in these facilities, but we're seeing a lot of research and development into other commodities as well, which is exciting. And at Gotham Greens, like I said, we focus on leafy greens primarily. Some of the attributes for these greens, why are they exciting, or what's the value proposition to a customer or the end consumer? It's non-GMO. We use non-GMO seeds. The products are pesticide-free. I think the biggest thing is that how fresh the product is, right? We can harvest a product in our greenhouse and have it into a supermarket in as little as 24 hours. And so that provides then upwards of 3 weeks of shelf life to the end consumer, while alternatively, the legacy sort of commodity product that comes out of the West Coast often is a week old before it reaches the consumer. So there's just a lot less shelf life, less freshness, and compromised flavor and nutrition and all those types of attributes. Food safety is another issue that is top of mind for everyone in our industry. So what that refers to is the cleanliness of the product. You may have read media reports about different food safety incidents that have taken place over the past few years, like romaine lettuce recalls due to contamination of E. coli or salmonella or listeria or other types of bacteria and virus. And a lot of that is due to just the way the open field farming works, the way crops are irrigated, the way they're harvested, packaged, distributed, and sold. And conversely, in a controlled environment, you can really put in structural controls to try to limit the risk of foodborne illness entering the production system and the distribution supply chain. So, of course, human health is of primary importance, but also is the economics of retailers literally losing tens of millions of dollars of sales every time a food safety outbreak occurs in fresh produce. And remarkably, more people are sickened in the US every year by eating produce than they are meat. So it's just really interesting. And so we believe controlled environment agriculture and indoor farming really provides a leg up, if done well, in terms of food safety and minimizing risk. So over the past 10 years, Gotham Greens has established relationships with some of the nation's largest supermarket retail chains, including Whole Foods Market, Albertsons, different banners like Jewel-Osco, banners like Target, Kroger, Peapod, Sprouts, ShopRite, among many others. We also work with food service companies. So these are catering groups, cafeterias, restaurant chains, all sorts of institutional users of fresh produce. Indoor farming represents still a very small part of the overall TAM, and we believe more and more indoor farming or more and more farming of leafy greens will move indoors. We're proud that our sales are outpacing the category in the entire indoor farming segment. So leafy greens last year grew 16%, organic certified branded product grew 19%. Indoor farming remarkably grew 50%, which is really exciting, and Gotham Greens grew last year 71%. The indoor farming, like I said, is about 1 or 2% of that $15 billion TAM. So we see room for multiple winners here. We see a clear path to about 10 to 15% of that total addressable market being covered by indoor farming companies over the next 5 years. Ultimately, it's the consumer that has to make the choice, and we believe consumers are responding to the longer shelf life, the freshness, just the tenderness of the product, and also they care that it's locally grown and it's grown responsibly with the environment in mind, using fewer resources, and it's better for the planet, it's better for them, and ultimately consumers are going to make these sorts of decisions with their spending dollars. Not investors, not startups, but it's really going to be the end consumer. So it's been very validating to see the consumer respond so favorably to indoor farm products and Gotham Greens products specifically. Making a positive impact in our communities has been a cornerstone of our ethos from day one. Urban farming comes in many different shapes and sizes. It's not just commercial scale production, which is what we focus on, but it's the small community garden down the street. It's the classroom garden. It's the farms on fire escapes and rooftops and vacant lots. And more urban dwellers and suburban dwellers, for that matter, are interested in how their food is grown, where it comes from, and more farming is being incorporated, and food production is being incorporated into curriculum for school-age children. So it is. So that's something that we want to participate in and partner. So we're really proud to have lots of community partners in all the markets in which we have greenhouses. So that's local schools, community groups, nonprofits. And in 2020, we donated over 300,000 pounds of produce to various groups serving people in need, which was obviously exacerbated by the pandemic. And yeah, these are just some testimonials that have come from some of our community partners, whether it's the largest soup kitchen in Rhode Island to the Greater Boston Food Bank, et cetera. So people just, they're used to getting so many canned goods and things like that. So to be able to get high quality lettuce and fresh greens into people's diets who are food insecure has been something that's been exciting and very rewarding and gratifying for us. We also work with schools. So we've donated, thousands of seedlings every year to school gardens and community gardens, and kind of training the next batch of urban farmers, which you think is really exciting. I think ultimately, for this sector to continue to prosper and succeed, we need more success stories. There's been a lot of interest and investor interest in this sector, but me and my peers firmly believe that indoor farming is going to play a much greater role in global food production in the years to come. The media has been reporting about this a lot. There's been a lot of thought leadership around just the sheer resource efficiency of this type of farming, especially as climate change continues to make a greater impact on the planet and we have dwindling natural resources. So for a variety of reasons, indoor farming is going to be a very bright spot in sort of the ag tech revolution and in our food production system in the years to come. So I appreciate you guys having an interest in learning more about us today and the sector at large. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Viraj, thank you for that talk. We have a few questions coming in on the chat, so I'll just facilitate those for you here. The first one we have is from Kelsey, and she asks, how have you decided where to locate your greenhouses? How have these been received by the cities you're in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our vision is really to cover a lot of the major metropolitan markets across the United States. So we started in New York, which is the largest one. And our greenhouses kind of serve the New York tri-state area, so New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So it's a little bit of a hub and spoke production and distribution model. We next picked Chicago as the third largest market in the country, third largest city, the Chicagoland area. And it's a cold weather place, doesn't have year-round local production, relies on that West Coast production that I talked about earlier. So we thought it was a great market to sort of test the concept and the model, and that was extremely successful. And then from there, we've targeted other fast-growing kind of population centers, so the greater Boston area, the greater Washington, D.C. area, Denver, and now Northern California. The projects and the company has been very well received in each of the markets that we've entered. We've received a lot of support from local elected officials, policymakers, the food community, the food and beverage community, and a lot of that has been based on the collaborations that we've done. A big part of our model and our site selection is around urban revitalization. So, for instance, our project in Providence repurposed a derelict General Electric light bulb factory that had been vacant for 20 plus years, and it was kind of an eyesore at this major intersection in downtown Providence. So the ability to come in there and remediate the site and build this kind of state-of-the-art greenhouse facility that produced over 65 jobs, represented a $15 million investment, was really well received by folks that prioritize economic development. Similar story in Baltimore. We built a facility at the site of the former Bethlehem steel plant, which at one point was the largest steel manufacturing plant in the world, that employed over 30,000 people, that closed its doors about 10 years ago. So a variety of companies, industrial users, and companies like Gotham Greens have come in and repurposed the site to build kind of 21st century manufacturing sites. And so that sort of continues. So overall, we're really proud about the partnerships that we've made and the locations that we've selected.
That's great, thank you. The next question comes from Kathleen, and it says, indoor ag is more sustainable when compared to traditional ag. How does Gotham Greens compare to its competitors in terms of sustainability goals? Are these goals important to your consumers? And as an additional comment, could you please comment on the electricity footprint of indoor ag as well?
Yeah, great question. So energy usage and overall sustainability is very, very high priority for us. We've been tracking our usage of electricity, energy, water, and waste really since inception. And we set targets for ourselves to reduce those each year. So to reduce the overall footprint of our production, but also to reduce costs. And so each greenhouse has progressively become more efficient in terms of its energy use, its water use, and reducing waste through the use of different technologies, hardware, software, and we just get better at what we do. I will say that at Gotham Greens, we have prioritized greenhouse production versus fully indoor, fully controlled environment production, which is also known as vertical farming. And the biggest difference there is we rely primarily on natural sunlight to grow. So our overall electricity usage is quite low. It's sort of single digits as a percentage of revenue. And all of that electricity comes from renewable sources. Also in a greenhouse, we employ a lot of passive heating and cooling techniques, unlike sort of systems that require 100% mechanical cooling, heating, lighting, airflow, and things like that. So that's one of the reasons why we work with greenhouses. And we, like I said earlier, 100% of our electricity comes from renewable sources. We're trying to get better on that. Some of that's on site, but the vast majority of that comes in the form of renewable energy credits. And but I think if you look at it in totality, you look at water usage, and also water usage, not all indoor farms necessarily recirculate the water. That's a choice that we've made. It requires a lot more monitoring of the water, filtration, ensuring parameters like dissolved oxygen and things are okay. But we think it's the right thing to do, to use less water. And I'm just excited about the industry is making so many different strides. The original equipment manufacturers are continually coming up with new hardware to kind of reduce resource use. So it's really important to us, and it's a great question.
Great, thank you. The next one we have, you may have answered this a little bit, but does the nutritional profile of leafy greens match that of produce grown in normal agriculture? You mentioned that you're mostly using greenhouses with natural light, so I'm assuming this is the case, but just wondering there.
Yeah, I can certainly speak for Gotham Greens. I mean, it really depends from grower to grower, right? Not all indoor grown product is the same, but for us, yes, we frequently send our products out for lab testing to measure different, vitamin content, mineral content, things like that, and it matches or exceeds USDA guidelines or sort of standard nutritional labels and other products that we've tested from time to time. So yeah, controlled environment farming, if done well, really allows the grower to dial in to the plant to ensure the plant is getting everything that it needs in terms of nutrition, in terms of light, temperature, humidity. They're very coddled plants, as I like to say. So if done well, again, it can really far exceed the nutritional profile of a product that's grown out in the field where one just doesn't have that level of control. You can't control rain, wind, hail, nutrients. Certainly you can test, but when you're dealing with thousands, if not millions of acres of farmland, when things are very spread out, out to the elements, growers simply do not have that level of control that indoor growers are afforded.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one more. So the last question I have here for you is, as Gotham Greens has expanded, what have been the biggest challenges in designing and building increasingly larger and more complex growing facilities?
A lot of challenges from growing from a 10-person startup to a 400 person, company with 9 facilities. It's, a lot of challenges along the way. The technology has evolved very, very quickly. So just a lot of research and development have gone into the decision-making for each subsequent facility that we've built. So we've tried to be patient, build 1 or 2 facilities a year, and then really test different systems and iterate upon it, and then design future facilities. And with each subsequent facility, we've introduced more automation, for instance, or advanced climate control, or different types of techniques. So it's just, I think for us, a little bit more of a slower and steadier pace of growth, I think has served us well and allowed us to improve the unit economics and the margins of each subsequent facility, increase the throughput, increase the crop yields. So that's something that's been really exciting for us. And just as like any startup, just learning to manage a bigger company, right? Delegating more, bringing in more people, bringing in more systems, governance, regulatory frameworks, human resources, things like ERP systems. So at every sort of step along the way, we've had to grow up a lot and become kind of more of a mid-sized company. But it's been certainly had its challenges, but it's been really rewarding, and we've had some great investors along the way that have provided a lot of guidance and that. So yeah, when we started the business, I was like driving the delivery van, literally doing all of that. And now we have a fleet of like 25 trucks. So it's just, it's been exciting to see that progression.
Yeah, that's amazing growth. Congratulations on all of that. Viraj, I just want to say thank you very much for holding this keynote. Very interesting talk. For our audience out there, we have a panel right after this on indoor ag, so please stay tuned and we'll get that started in a couple minutes. Viraj, again, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.